I think you were a workaholic when we got married, but this is just plain ridiculous. I'm afraid I have to agree with them, Professor. Which is why you're going to take a shower right now. Without waiting for Dad to respond, Mom sat down the cooler she carried, went over to my dad, lazed and grabbed him by the shoulders. As he issued a squawk of surprise, she pulled him out of the technological hole he had worked himself into. Hey, come on, May. Dislodging Mom's hand, Dad then started pushing himself up to his feet. Look, despite what you may think, I'm an adult after all. Then why don't you try acting like one? I'm acting like the breadwinner. A breadwinner who's about to win his loving wife and one and only son a lifetime supply of bread. Don't you mean we're going to win a lifetime supply of bread among other things? Right, of course. I don't imply otherwise, Candy. Well, Candy was nodding with slight satisfaction at my mom making a pouty face. I was making a point of not saying anything. I learned the hard way that it was never in anybody's interest to get involved in one of my parents' discussion. They usually settle things on their own, sooner or later. No use in me throwing fuel on their fire. Takeshi, please set the case down so I can straighten your father up. Clean up like a civilized human being and make progress in a major project that will change the world of gaming and make us a lot of money. I guess you're right, my priorities are awfully skewed. And what is that? What is what? It's a little something called soap. And I also brought you some shampoo, toothbrush, some toothpaste, as well as everything else you need to get cleaned up. Oh, hold on there. I can't. You can't possibly expect me to use the shower at the college gym. I bet I expected you to do so. You expect I to do so. But I hate public shower. I always hated those blast things. I never get used to them. Back when I went to school, why on earth would I use them now? Because the only person who is going to be there has already seen everything you got. So, she wouldn't make fun of it. No, come on, I'm sure we can arrange for you to get cleaned up fast enough. For a while, it looked like Dad was going to protest some more, but I knew him. I also knew that he had to be thinking something alongside the lines of the sooner I humor my wife, the sooner I can get back to my work. Alright, fine. But what about Taki? What about me? You don't expect me to leave you alone in this lab now, do you? Our project? Oh, for goodness sakes, Josh. Don't you think you're taking a thing too far with this whole top secret project you've been working on? It's just some game. Just some new game. Mate, we are talking about the next generation of gaming technology, a quantum leap in the world of games. And besides, the university has made it very clear they don't want to take any chances of a security leak. We're under contract to keep this a secret. Exactly. So you can imagine why I don't want to leave him here unsupervised. Looks like my dad don't trust him. Dad doesn't trust you, Taki. At these words, I noticed Candy's eyes seem to light up right before a devious smile squirted her lips. But these things disappeared almost as quickly as they had appeared as she shifted about and put a look of pure pureness. That's true, but if it did make you feel better, I could keep an eye on Taki for you. Dr. Candy doesn't have any good thoughts in the brain right now, in the mind. It caught my parents' attention as well as prompting a mute grunt from me. For a while, it was true that an unguarded opportunity to scope out Dad's lab was precisely what I had been hoping for. I also had been hoping for the opportunity to be completely unguarded. Candy had made it clear that she shared my dad's desire to keep this project a secret, and it was so also obvious that she had other plans in mind for enjoying my company. You sure you can manage that, Candy? No offense, but I know my son. He can be quite a handful when he puts his mind to it. Of course, Professor. Besides, I'm sure you're worrying over nothing. After all, Taki's always struck me as being quite the gentleman. There's, it's settled then. Time to go and bathe with your wife and maybe do something else. Without another word, Mom began ushering Dad towards the door despite the fact that he clearly was none too happy about this. Taki, you better promise that you won't go snooping around here or try sweet talk Candy into anything. Do you understand? Don't worry, Dad. Scout's honor. But you never were a scout. Candy, you better keep a close scout honor. You never were a scout. You never were a scout, Taki. Candy, you better keep a close eye on him. Don't let him out of your sight, not even for a second. Oh, come on, I'm sure Taki knows better than to go snooping around. When Dad made a face at this, Candy just smiled in a reassuring manner. Don't worry, Professor, I'm sure I can keep Taki suitably distracted. Trying very hard not to pay attention to Candy's last statement, I simply watched as Mom escorted Dad out of the lab, with him still protesting the idea of leaving me in his lab. For despite Candy's reassurance, he was certain that doing so was tantamount to leaving a pack of starving wolves in a henhouse. And as for me, I decided that since Dad was certain that I was going to snoop around his lab, why should I disappoint him? True, you shouldn't disappoint him, but before I could even consider where to start snooping around, I once again felt two voluminous mass of feminine flesh pressing hard against my back, hot breath upon my neck, and two slender arms sticking about my upper torso. And here I thought they'd never leave. At this point, I felt my entire body going rigid, with a certain portion even more so. Which part? Dr. Hughes? What did I tell you, Taki? Call me Candy. Jumping slightly at the way Candy was speaking with a tone of voice that was well past the flirting stage, I quickly pulled out of her grasp and turned to face her. Candy, what are you? Candy just smiled that much more deeply as she opened her lab coat a bit more, giving me a bit better view of her exquisite hourglass of a figure. Isn't it obvious I'm doing precisely what I told the professor I would do? Keeping you distracted. I'm pretty sure that this isn't what my dad had in mind. He never said that I couldn't. I considered arguing this point, but as Candy closed the gap between us, I realized there was no point in that, so I decided to try a different tactic. You should lock the door, and you know Mom and Dad will be back soon, right? The door locked automatically, so that's no problem. And as for Professor, I know it takes about 5 minutes or longer to get to the nearest shower, and at least 10 minutes for him to get cleaned up and dressed and all the rest of it, and another 5 minutes to get back here, so that leaves us 20 minutes. 20 minutes. That's plenty of time for some fun. And I wanted to get my hands on you for quite a while. What? What did she just do? What did she do that? I'm a minor, right? What's this 2 doing right here? Well, I was about to protest this, but even as I spluttered and started, Candy reached up to the front of her shirt and took out the boundaries around the buttons, and with a grin ripped the top open, causing her exquisite breast to jump free of the restraining cloth, causing my eyes to bulge and jaw drop. The enormous endowment bounced a bit more and continued to bounce in the bra as she showed up to me. Candy, I don't think we should. No, please, that we shouldn't. No. Candy planted a lip squarely upon my own, cut me off, a firm potential kiss that caused a heat rising throughout my entire body. And while we were in contact for a second or so, I felt like a lot longer to me. Now, was that so bad? No, it wasn't so bad, but we really shouldn't be doing this. We shouldn't. Who says I'm an adult and you're an adult and I'm not that much older than you are? So, far past the flirting stage, I was really starting to get anxious. I carefully backed away from Candy with my hands held up in protest. It's like the hands is like pointing the middle finger, and it's like, Candy, stay away from me, you bitch. You this slut. Candy, no. I mean, this is a bad idea. We could get caught, you could get fired, Dad could get in trouble, and you worry too much. You know that. Now, don't you just... No? Huh? Hold on. Clear my throat. Wow, this is too much. In that brief instant, Candy had quickened her pace, immediately bridging the gap between the two of us, and I still holding my hands up in protest. Stay away from me, Candy. As a result, those hands managed to land squarely upon the unforgivably sexy scientist's ample breast before I realized what had happened. And as soon as I realized what was going on, I felt my entire body burn with hormonal fire as I gasped in confusion. All the while, Candy just smiled naughtily. Now you're getting the swing of things. I jumped back off her like I had just found my hands on an open fire. I'm sorry, Candy. No, this is a really bad idea, really, because from where I'm standing, it looks like this is a great idea. Or at least part of you does. Wincing in realization, I felt my own body straining inside my clothes in response to all of this stimulation. I tried very hard to figure out what the heck I should do. Unfortunately, Candy was quick to take advantage of my hesitation and once again glided up to me. While I was still stuttering and sputtering, she took a hold of my wrist and guided my hands around her sumptuous form. Now, Taki, try not to take... I'm not trying to make you uncomfortable. Well, you're succeeding anyway. But I do really find you quite attractive, sort of like your father in a way, except you take better care of yourself and you're not already taken. At least the professor never mentioned you had a girlfriend. This tactical thrust took me by surprise. I mean, well, it's not a big exercise and I'm not a big exercise enthusiast, but I'm not obsessive with games to the point where I let my body wither away to nothing, so I do keep in shape. And she had a point, I didn't have a girlfriend. Well, no, but still, this is awfully fast, don't you think? Maybe since you hardly ever come to the university, I thought I'd make the most of the opportunity. So she took her clothes off, put it back on, put it back on. She could button it and button back on. I think it would take some time for her to button her clothes, right? I think it's a very long time, very long time. Before I could say anything to counter this, Candy once again placed her lips upon my own and kissed me. Well, she's really jumping the gun, and not just a kiss, but a kiss. Hot, passion, and potent, and I realized that I had a serious problem. I would have a pretty naive to think I was the first guy that Candy had gone after. She was just a way too big of a flirt and a way too willing. And there's just too many guys roaming the hall university for me to think that she just has been bidding her time on my account. Also, I realize some of the folks might call me naive or romantic, but I really don't want my first time to be like this. I agree, shouldn't. I had always fancied the kind of things that happen either in my games or in romantic novels or whatever, boy meets girl or vice versa. They like each other, they start going out with each other, their relationship improves until nature takes its course. But this of all the feel of me just being another score for Candy, like I was another point in some kind of game she was playing. Even worse, I was having a harder and harder time of trying to think. Candy had wrapped one of her legs about my frame, and I struggled with the situation. I realized that she had guided my hands so that they were cupping a posterior that a great many guys would like to cue their hands on. Her ample breasts were pressing against my own chest, and only a flimsy barrier of a sinking and my own shirt kept me from experiencing them in their glory. As the situation continued to escalate, my body and Candy's continued to stumble about the lab. Right upon my heels caught on something on the floor, and the center of my gravity went over the edge. Oh, he fell, and Candy fell above him. And since Candy and I were so thoroughly intertwined, we both sank staggering backwards, unfailing as we tried to recover, only to find ourselves past a point of no return as we were sent crashing to the floor. Bam! Bang, bang into the room, man. Oh, I didn't mean for that to happen. I agreed with Candy and might have given voice to the sentiment if not for the fact that oxygen was short in supply, courtesy of the fact that her considerable breasts were pressing against my face, cutting off my ability to breathe. Ironically enough, this reality was what I needed to clear my mind off the hormonal overload, and I started thinking of stuff between my ears. You know what? You should quickly escape this and quickly find out what your father is doing. Grabbing Candy by the waist, I managed to push her off enough for me to allow me to suck in a deep breath and then slide out from under her, which was all I had time to do before the fact that I just bashed my head on the floor started calling for my attention, prompting me to roll about the floor and placing my hands where a large lump was already swelling on the back of my skull. Takeshi, are you well? Did I hurt you? I didn't hurt you too bad, did I? I was a bit too busy in the pain getting my act together to answer right away. As I slowly composed myself and got back to my knees, I started looking about, intent on focusing on Candy and my current dilemma with her to tell her off or politely refuse her on something. But before I could address her, I looked on ahead of where I currently knelt and saw something that grabbed my full attention. Candy, what are those? As these words, Candy's eyes followed my gaze, at which her face fell with displeasure. That's something you shouldn't have seen. As I proceed with these words, my eyes went wide with realization. Wait, you mean this is what you and Dad have been working on? Well, looks like the situation has finally ended, and you know what? Taki has finally found what Dad is working on. We have ran away from the pervert. Well, but my focus was no longer on Candy. Wow, what is this? This is quite cool, right? Instead, my full attention was now on this piece of equipment that now stood practically staring me in the face. The thing I was looking at certainly didn't look like your standard gaming console. Instead, each machine in question looked like a raised circular platform with what could almost have been a car seat straightened out mount on it by a thick pole. Well, this seems like some mind control device or something which you can, go into the game with, like teleport your mind into the game, into the world, in the RPG world, like Sword Art Online or something like that. The seat had a harness and some kind of helmet mounted on top. As I moved to study the twin platform, I noticed each of them had a pair of high-tech gloves as well as a similar set of booties, wide straightened seat. All the while, the twin machine gave the impression of having made from whatever stuff that had been able to get his hands on. He had looted a salvaged yarn for much of it. On top of that, both platforms were standing alone off in a corner of the lab, making certain that no prying eyes could catch a sight of them from the door. They were also hooked to several computers. While I'm no expert from information being displayed on the screen, it looked like they were running some kind of diagnostics on both machines. What are they? What do they do? Takashi, please, I can't tell you, I'm under contract. It's obvious that Candy was upset about this, but I was no longer focusing or even thinking on her. My full attention was on the two machines before me, and as I continued to study them, I began to realize what they were. And when I did, my lips curled up in a great big smile. Virtual reality! Exactly. This is a setup that looked like a full body immersion, something I never had a chance to try myself. And even how hyped my dad was about this project, the VR system I was looking was something even beyond what I had seen. Something. That's right, it's virtual reality. Well, looks like the dad is back. Congrats, Taki. I hope that Candy has finally buttoned up her shirt, which seemed to be very hard to button, She had to breathe in and button her shirt and so on. Bang! Looks like the dad beat him or something like that, hit him on the head. The instant this word was sounded, I very nearly jumped clean out of my skin. Having already realized I was in big trouble, I quickly looked about and felt like a little kid that happened to be caught his hand in the proverbial cookie jar when I saw Dad cleaned up and wearing an unhappy scrunch on his face. And this is why I didn't want to leave him in my lap. At this point, Candy walked up to my father. At some point after our fall, she had straightened up her clothes and shoved her breast back into the shirt and buttoned up enough so that she looked much like she had before she tried attacking me. Well, Candy is quite fast, right? I'm sorry, Professor. Takeshi and I were talking so on when we tripped and fell. I was trying to help him, but I hadn't realized that He wandered so close to the imagined V units, while I was marveling over the fact that